The galactic blockade had lasted 72 hours. Now it was gone, scattered across space in pieces of twisted metal and fading energy clouds. The human fleet hung motionless in the void, their weapons powered down but ready, waiting for the galaxy's response to their demonstration. Admiral So Young stood in the observation deck of the New Sol, looking out at the debris field that had once been 50 of the galaxy's most advanced warships. She felt no joy in the victory, only sadness that it had been necessary. "Admiral," Commander Hyunwoo approached with a communication pad, "we're receiving surrender signals from the remaining galactic forces. Acting Admiral Chanwoo wants to discuss terms." "Put him through," So Young ordered. The hologram of Chanwoo appeared, showing a being who looked much older than he had 3 days ago. His uniform was torn, his face bore the marks of stress, and his eyes held the hollow look of someone who had seen too much death. "Admiral So Young," he began, "I formally request cessation of hostilities. The Galactic Council is prepared to negotiate." "Acting Admiral Chanwoo," So Young replied with genuine sympathy, "I want you to know that we take no pleasure in your losses. We fought only because we were given no choice." Chanwoo nodded slowly. I understand that now. My people misjudged yours badly. We thought superior technology meant superior capabilities. Different doesn't mean inferior, Acting Admiral. We learned that lesson long ago. During humanity's expansion through space, every species has strengths and weaknesses. What are your terms for peace? Chanwoo asked. So Young had prepared for this moment. We want what we originally requested. Free passage through galactic space, the right to trade and explore, and recognition as equals. Nothing more, Chanwoo looked surprised. That's all? You could demand tribute, territory, anything you want. You've proven you can take it. Taking things by force isn't the human way, Acting Admiral. We fight only when we must, and we stop fighting as soon as our goals are achieved. The formal surrender ceremony took place aboard the neutral ship Star's Edge, Captain Da-Yoon's vessel. Da-Yoon had volunteered her ship because she had been present during first contact and understood both sides of the conflict. Elder Taemin represented the Galactic Council, his crystal form dim with exhaustion and shame. Ambassador Kyung-ho accompanied him, carrying the ancient text that had tried to warn them all. Admiral So Young came aboard with a small delegation, including Commander Hyun-woo and Ambassador In-ho. The humans looked tired but not triumphant. They had won a war they never wanted to fight. Admiral So Young, Elder Taemin began. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer our formal surrender and apologies for the actions that led to this conflict. Elder Taemin, So Young replied, humans don't seek surrender from people who meant no real harm. You made a mistake based on incomplete information. We all make mistakes. Kyung-ho stepped forward with his ancient texts. Admiral, I studied the old writings about your people. They said humans were peaceful but terrible when threatened. They said you valued freedom above life itself. We should have listened to those warnings, so... Young smiled sadly. Ambassador Kyung-ho, those writings were probably created by species that learned about us the hard way, just like you did. We've had conflicts before, throughout our expansion into space. Each time, we hoped it would be different. Why do humans fight so differently than other species? Asked Elder Taemin. Your willingness to accept casualties, your unconventional tactics. It's unlike anything in our military experience. Dr. Young-hee, who had joined the meeting to present her biological findings, answered. Because humans evolved differently than most galactic species. You evolved on stable worlds with predictable conditions. Humans evolved on a death world where survival meant adapting quickly and fighting impossible odds. Death world? Taemin asked. Earth has extreme weather, dangerous predators, natural disasters, and 1,000 other threats. Humans didn't just survive, they thrived. They learned to see challenges as opportunities and to find advantages in desperate situations. So Young nodded. Dr. Young-hee is right. On Earth, the choice was often adapt or die. So we learned to adapt quickly, think creatively, and never give up no matter how bad things looked. But your technology, protested Minsu, who had been silent until now, it's so different from ours. We assumed it was primitive. Commander Hyun-woo answered this question. Our technology is designed for reliability and effectiveness, not sophistication. A kinetic weapon will work in any environment. Phase shifting doesn't depend on complex energy systems that can be disrupted. Simple solutions are often the best solutions. We built our ships to survive and fight in the worst possible conditions. So Young added, we disguised them as exploration vessels because we hoped we'd never need to use their true capabilities. The formal peace negotiations took several hours, but the terms were surprisingly simple. The humans wanted free passage, equal treatment, and the right to defend themselves if attacked. In return, they offered trade agreements, technological exchange, and their assistance in protecting the galaxy from external threats. External threats? Asked Elder Taemin. So Young looked at the galactic leader seriously. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Elder. There are things out there in the dark between galaxies that would make our recent conflict look like a minor disagreement. Humanity has encountered some of them during our expansion. You'll need defenders who can fight impossible odds and win. And humans can do that? Jiwoo asked. It's what we do. So Young replied simply. The Treaty of New Horizons was signed by all parties, formally ending the conflict and establishing humanity's place in galactic civilization. But the real work began after the signing. Ambassador Young Sik, humanity's chief diplomat, worked with Acting Admiral Chan Woo to establish new protocols for interaction between human and galactic forces. The two species would need to learn to work together, despite their very different approaches to life and war. Captain Wu Jin, who had first detected the human fleet months ago, was assigned as liaison officer to the Human Exploration Division. His first mission would be investigating strange signals from beyond. The galactic rim, signals that suggested new threats approaching from the void between galaxies. Dr. Young-hee began a comprehensive study of human biology and psychology, hoping to understand how their unique evolutionary background had shaped them into such effective survivors and warriors. Her research would help other species work with humans without triggering their defensive instincts. Communications Officer Yoon Ji was transferred to the new Joint Command Structure, where she would help coordinate between human and galactic communication systems. Her first task was establishing protocols for mixed fleets operating in dangerous areas. The integration wasn't always smooth. Humans approached problems differently than other galactic species, and their willingness to accept casualties in pursuit of objectives made some aliens uncomfortable. But slowly, understanding grew between the different peoples. 6 months after the Treaty of New Horizons, the first joint human-galactic expedition launched to investigate the mysterious signals from beyond the galaxy. Captain Wu Jin commanded the galactic contingent, while Captain Hyunwoo led the human forces. Captain Hyunwoo, Wu Jin said as their ships moved toward the edge of galactic space. I'm curious about something. During the war, your people fought like death meant nothing to you. But now, working together, I can see that you mourn your losses just like we do. How do you reconcile that? Hyunwoo considered the question carefully. Captain Wu Jin, humans don't value death. We value the things that are worth dying for. Freedom, family, the future of our species. When those things are threatened, we'll pay any price to protect them. But we never forget the cost. And now, what do you fight for now? Hyunwoo looked out at the stars ahead of them, where unknown dangers waited in the darkness. Now we fight for all of us. Humans, galactics, everyone who calls this galaxy home. Because some threats are too big for any one species to face alone. As their combined fleet moved into the unknown, Ambassador Kyung-ho updated his research files with a new entry. The ancient texts were correct about humans in every way. They are peaceful until threatened, terrible in war, and generous in victory. But the texts missed the most important truth about them. They are natural guardians. When they adopt you as family, they will protect you with the same fierce determination they show in protecting themselves. The Star Children have returned to the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as protectors, and the galaxy is safer for their presence. The legends had become reality, and reality had proven more complex and more hopeful than any myth. Humans weren't monsters or gods. They were survivors who had learned that the best way to survive was to make sure everyone survived together. In the depths of space, beyond the edge of the galaxy, something vast and hungry detected the approaching fleet. It had devoured a dozen galaxies in its long existence, always finding the same thing: civilizations that fought each other instead of uniting against external threats. This galaxy felt different. The energy signatures showed multiple species working together, led by beings whose very presence radiated determination and fierce protective instincts. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council had been going for 6 hours straight. Reports kept coming in from across the galaxy, and each one was worse than the last. The human fleet hadn't stopped with their victory over Admiral Seok Jin's blockade. They were systematically dismantling every galactic military position that stood between them and free space. Elder Timon's crystal form flickered with stress patterns as he read the latest reports. The humans have destroyed monitoring stations in 7 systems. They're not just defending themselves anymore, they're actively removing our ability to watch them. Ambassador Kyung-ho stood up, his ancient texts scattered across his desk. The old writings warned about this. They called it the long hunt. When humans decide that someone is a threat to their survival, they don't stop until that threat is completely removed. But we offered to negotiate, protested Jiwoo, her gaseous form swirling frantically in her containment suit. After they defeated Admiral Seok Jin, we sent diplomatic messages. You offered to negotiate after you tried to cage them, Kyung-ho replied sadly. According to the texts, humans have very long memories when it comes to those who threaten their freedom. Military advisor Min-soo sat in his chair, looking broken. His entire military philosophy had been shattered in a matter of hours. Everything he thought he knew about warfare and technology had proven wrong. How? He whispered. How did we get it so completely wrong? Dr. Young-hee, whose biological report had finally been read by the council, spoke up from her research station. Because we judged them by our standards instead of trying to understand theirs. We saw metal hulls and called them primitive. We saw chemical rockets and called them outdated. We never considered that they might have good reasons for those choices. What reasons? Min-soo asked desperately. Reliability, Dr. Young-hee explained. Metal doesn't get sick like bio-grown hulls. Chemical reactions don't depend on complex energy systems that can be disrupted. Their technology is simple, but it's also dependable in ways our advanced systems aren't. On the main display, new reports appeared from the battle zones. Captain Hyunwoo's ship, the Indomitable Spirit, had just destroyed a heavily fortified monitoring station in the Kepler system. The station's advanced shields and weapons had been useless against the human ship's ability to phase through solid matter. The attack had been recorded by the station's sensors before they were destroyed. The council watched in horrified fascination as the human ship simply passed through the station's defenses like they didn't exist, then unleashed kinetic weapons from inside the protected perimeter. They're not just using stealth technology, observed Commander Sunwoo, one of the few galactic officers to survive the first battle. They're using some kind of matter phasing that lets them ignore physical barriers entirely. Is such technology even possible? Asked Elder Taemin. Dr. Young-hee studied the sensor readings. Theoretically, yes, but it would require an understanding of quantum mechanics far beyond what we thought they possessed, and the energy requirements would be enormous. Yet they're doing it, Min-soo said bitterly. Primitive humans with impossible technology. The reports continued to pour in. Admiral So-young had divided her fleet into smaller groups that struck at multiple targets simultaneously. The galactic forces couldn't predict where they would attack next because the humans seemed to be everywhere at once. Captain Da-un, who had been present during first contact, watched from her ship as human forces systematically removed every galactic military presence from a dozen systems. Her tactical officer, Woo Jin, monitored the human communications with growing amazement. Captain, he reported, I'm intercepting human battle communications. They're discussing casualties and damage, but their tone is strange. How so? They talk about death like it's just another tactical consideration. Listen to this. He played a recorded transmission. Admiral So-young, this is Captain Dong-hyun. We've taken heavy fire from the Vega station. Lost 12 crew members and our starboard engine is down to 60%. Proceeding with assault plan as ordered. Dae-yoon listened to the calm, matter-of-fact report. He just reported major casualties and critical damage, but he sounds like he's discussing the weather. That's what I mean, Captain. They don't seem to fear death the way other species do. They accept it as part of their job. Another transmission came through. Roger, Captain Dong-hyun. Sorry about your losses. Take whatever action you think best to complete the mission. If you need to ram the station, you have my authorization. Dae-yoon felt a chill. The human admiral had just given permission for a suicide attack, and both officers had discussed it like it was a normal military option. Captain, Woo Jin said quietly, I don't think we're fighting normal beings. I think we're fighting something that sees death differently than we do. The truth of his words became clear when Captain Dong Hyun did exactly what Admiral So Young had authorized. His damaged ship, the Healing Light, accelerated directly toward the Vega Station's command center. The station's defenders fired everything they had, but the human ship phased through their weapons fire. At the last moment, Captain Dong Hyun rematerialized his vessel inside the station's shield perimeter and detonated his reactor. The explosion destroyed both the human ship and the Galactic Station. Captain Dong Hyun and his entire crew died instantly, but they had eliminated a major military threat to human operations. The other human ships continued their missions without pause. No time for mourning, no ceremonies for the dead. They had a job to do, and they would do it regardless of the cost. Dr. Young-hee watched the recordings of these battles with scientific fascination and personal horror. They're not just biologically adapted for survival, she told the council. They're psychologically adapted for warfare in ways we can't understand. Explain, demanded Elder Taemin. Most species avoid death even in military situations. We fight to protect our lives and our people's lives, but humans seem to fight for concepts, freedom, honor, revenge. They'll die for ideas just as readily as they'll die to protect their families. That's insane, Jiwoo protested. To us, yes, but it makes them incredibly dangerous. You can't negotiate with someone who values abstract principles more than their own survival. The human campaign continued with ruthless efficiency. They struck at military targets throughout galactic space, always avoiding civilian populations but systematically destroying anything that could be used to threaten or monitor them. Admiral So Young coordinated the attacks from her flagship, moving her forces like pieces on a chessboard. She had studied galactic military doctrine and found it predictable. The galactic species fought to minimize their own losses and maximize their advantages. Humans fought to win regardless of cost. Commander Hyun-woo, she called to her second-in-command. Status report on the Outer Rim operations. Admiral, we've cleared all galactic military presence from systems bordering human space. Estimated enemy losses are 47 major ships and installations. Our losses are 8 ships and approximately 300 personnel. So Young nodded grimly. The exchange rate was in humanity's favor, but every human death was a tragedy. Still, it was necessary. The galaxy had to learn that caging humans was not acceptable. What about civilian casualties? She asked. 0, Admiral. All our strikes have been against military targets only. We've gone out of our way to avoid harm to non-combatants. This was important to So Young. Humans could be ruthless in war, but they tried to limit their violence to those who had chosen to fight. It was one of the principles that made them different from simple monsters. The galactic forces tried several times to regroup and mount counterattacks, but their efforts were hampered by their inability to predict human movements. The humans didn't follow conventional military doctrine. They struck where they were least expected and retreated before effective responses could be organized. Acting Admiral Chan Woo, now commanding the scattered galactic forces, sent a desperate message to the Galactic Council. Request immediate ceasefire negotiations. Our military capabilities are being systematically destroyed. If this continues, we will have no ability to defend ourselves against any threat. The message reached the Council just as reports came in of the latest human victory. A major galactic fortress in the Centauri system had fallen to a human assault that had lasted less than 4 hours. Elder Taemin looked around the council chamber at the shocked faces of the delegates. It appears we have no choice. We must negotiate before they destroy our entire military structure. But they're primitives, Min-soo protested weakly. How can we surrender to primitives? Ambassador Kyung-ho stood up with his ancient texts. They were never primitives, Advisor Min-soo. They were legends, and legends by definition are capable of impossible things. The council voted unanimously to request immediate peace negotiations with the humans, but even as they sent the message, more reports arrived of human victories across the galaxy. The Star Children had been awakened to war, and they were very, very good at it. The galaxy was about to learn the final truth about humans. They were as generous in victory as they were terrible in battle. But first they had to prove beyond any doubt that they could not be caged, threatened, or controlled by anyone. Admiral Seok Jin stood on his command bridge, feeling confident about Operation Safeguard. The human fleet sat quietly in the middle of his blockade, surrounded by the most advanced warships the galaxy could offer. 50 ships with weapons that could crack planets, shields that could stop anything, and technology beyond the humans' primitive understanding. "Status report," he ordered his tactical officer. Lieutenant Chan Wu looked up from his instruments, but his expression was troubled. "Admiral, the human ships are showing strange energy readings. After their threat, all their vessels began powering up systems we can't identify." "Unknown systems in primitive ships?" Seokjin shook his head. "Probably just their way of trying to look dangerous. Like an animal making itself appear bigger when threatened." "Sir, these energy levels are beyond anything we've seen from them before. Some of their ships are reading power outputs that rival our own." Seokjin walked over to look at the displays himself. The readings did look unusual, but he was sure there was a simple explanation. "Probably overloading their primitive reactors to try to impress us. Let them waste their fuel. When they run out of power, they'll be more willing to negotiate." Throughout the galactic fleet, other commanders were seeing the same readings. Commander Sun Wu aboard the heavy cruiser Stellar Pride studied his sensors with growing concern. "Captain," his science officer reported, "the human vessels are emitting energy signatures I've never seen before. It's like their ships are changing into something else entirely." Sun Wu had more experience than most officers in the fleet. He had seen many different technologies during his years of service, but these readings made no sense. "Are they reconfiguring their ships somehow?" "Unknown, sir. But whatever they're doing, it's happening throughout their entire fleet in perfect coordination." On the human flagship, Admiral So Young watched the tactical displays showing the galactic positions. The enemy had good ships and good positions, but they had made one critical mistake. They thought they understood what they were facing. "Commander Yun Wu," she said calmly, "give the order. Phase 1 of Protocol 7 is now active." Throughout the human fleet, ships that had appeared primitive and crude began to transform. Hidden panels slid away to reveal weapon systems that didn't exist in any galactic database. Hull sections rearranged themselves to show armor configurations designed for war, not exploration. The human ships weren't primitive exploration vessels. They were warships disguised as exploration vessels, built by a species that had learned hard lessons about survival in a dangerous universe. Captain Dong Hyun, whose medical ship had been attacked, received his new orders with grim satisfaction. His vessel, the Healing Light, looked like a simple medical transport. In reality, it was one of humanity's most advanced stealth ships. "Medical mission is now secondary," he announced to his crew. "Primary mission is showing these aliens what happens when they kill human healers." His ship began to phase shift, using technology the galactic species had never imagined. The Healing Light became invisible to their sensors, transparent to their weapons, and capable of moving through solid matter. Lieutenant Chan Wu watched his instruments in horror as human ships began to disappear from his sensors. "Admiral, the human vessels are vanishing from our screens." "Impossible," Seokjin said, but even as he spoke he could see the readings changing. Ships that had been clearly visible moments before were now gone. It must be some kind of sensor jamming, he decided. Switch to backup sensors and visual confirmation. But the backup sensors showed the same thing. Empty space where hundreds of human ships had been moments. Before Commander Sun Wu was the first to understand what was happening. "All ships prepare for attack. The humans have stealth technology beyond our detection capabilities." His warning came too late. The first human ship to attack was Captain Dong Hyun's Healing Light. It materialized inside the galactic formation, its phase shift technology allowing it to pass through their shields as if they didn't exist. The weapons it revealed weren't energy beams or plasma cannons like galactic ships used. They were something much simpler and much more deadly. Projectiles made from materials that didn't interact with energy shields. All the kinetic rounds tore through the galactic ship's defenses like they weren't there. Because to these weapons they weren't there. Energy shields that could stop any known weapon were useless against chunks of metal traveling at incredible speeds. Admiral Seokjin watched in shock as 3 of his ships were crippled in seconds. "Return fire. All ships, return fire." But how do you shoot at something you can't see? The human attacks continued with terrifying precision. Ships would appear just long enough to fire, then vanish again before the galactic forces could respond. It was like fighting ghosts. "Admiral," Chan Wu reported, his voice shaking, We've lost contact with 7 ships in the last 5 minutes. The humans are picking us apart. Seok-jin couldn't believe what he was seeing. His advanced fleet was being destroyed by primitives with metal ships and chemical rockets. It was impossible. Admiral So-young monitored the battle from the New Seoul. Her ships were performing exactly as designed: hit hard, hit fast, and disappear before the enemy could respond. It was a strategy humans had perfected during centuries of interstellar conflict. "Commander Hyunwoo," she said, "signal the Galactic Commander. Tell him we're willing to accept his surrender." The message reached Admiral Seok-jin as he watched another of his ships explode. The proud vessel Star's Honor broke apart under a barrage of kinetic weapons, its advanced technology useless against simple physics. "Surrender?" he said in disbelief. "They want us to surrender? We have twice as many ships?" "Sir," Chanwoo replied quietly, "we had twice as many ships. Current count shows we've lost 15 vessels, with more taking damage every minute. Their stealth technology makes accurate targeting impossible." The human message continued. "Admiral Seok-jin, you started this fight when you killed our healers. We can end it whenever we choose. Surrender now, and no more of your people need to die." Seok-jin's pride wouldn't let him accept defeat from primitive aliens. "All ships, emergency dispersal pattern. Get some distance so we can regroup and—" His orders were cut off as the healing light materialized directly above his flagship. Captain Dong-hyun's voice came over the communication system. "This is for Dr. Ari and Boram, and all the patients you killed when you fired on a medical ship." The kinetic bombardment that followed turned the flagship's command section into twisted metal. Admiral Seok-jin died, still refusing to believe that primitive humans had defeated his advanced fleet. Lieutenant Chanwoo, now the senior surviving officer, took command of what remained of the galactic forces. He looked around at his damaged bridge and made a decision that would save lives. "All ships, this is Acting Admiral Chanwoo. Cease fire and prepare to surrender. The humans have proven their point." The human attacks stopped immediately. Admiral So-young's image appeared on the galactic ship's screens. She looked tired but determined. "Acting Admiral Chanwoo, I'm sorry for your losses. We didn't want this fight, but you gave us no choice when you killed our medical personnel." Chanwoo nodded slowly. "Admiral So-young, I apologize for underestimating your capabilities. We were told your technology was primitive." "Our technology is different," So-young corrected. "We learned long ago that simple solutions often work better than complex ones. A chunk of metal traveling fast enough will go through any energy shield. Stealth that bends light around our ships works against any sensor system. Why did you hide these capabilities during first contact?" So-young's expression was sad. "Because we hoped we wouldn't need them. Humans prefer peace, Acting Admiral, but we've learned that the galaxy is a dangerous place and we always prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." The battle was over, but its effects would spread throughout the galaxy. News of the human victory reached the Galactic Council within hours, causing panic and confusion. Ambassador Kyung-ho, who had tried to warn them, stood before the emergency session with his ancient texts. "I told you the myths contained truth. The humans are exactly what the ancient civilization said they were: peaceful until threatened, then unstoppable." Elder Tae-min looked at the battle reports in shock. 15 ships destroyed, 12 more heavily damaged, and we never even saw most of their fleet. How is this possible? Military advisor Min-soo, the architect of Operation Safeguard, sat in stunned silence. His careful analysis of human capabilities had been completely wrong. The primitive ships were actually advanced warships. The crude technology was actually superior in combat. Everything he thought he knew was false. Dr. Young-hee's buried report was finally retrieved and read by the Council. Her biological analysis of human capabilities painted a picture of a species designed for survival in impossible conditions, exactly what they had just demonstrated in battle. "What do we do now?" asked Ji-woo, her gaseous form swirling with agitation. "They've proven they can destroy our fleets. What's to stop them from conquering the entire galaxy?" The answer came from Admiral So-young herself, in a message broadcast to all galactic worlds. "The United Earth Defense Force has no interest in conquest. We came seeking friendship and trade. We fought only because you caged us and killed our healers." The emergency session of the Galactic Council had stretched into its third day. The Great Hall buzzed with nervous energy as delegates debated what to do about the human fleet. Ambassador Kyung-ho sat quietly in his section, watching the other delegates argue while he studied his ancient texts one more time. Elder Taiman called for order. We have heard many proposals. Now we must decide how to proceed with these humans. Council Military Advisor Min-soo stood up confidently. He had spent the last 2 days analyzing the human ships and felt certain about his conclusions. Fellow delegates, I have completed my assessment of the human fleet. While their numbers are impressive, their technology is centuries behind ours. He activated a hologram showing the human ships alongside galactic vessels. Look at the differences. Our ships use bio-grown hulls that can heal themselves. Theirs are made of crude metal that cracks under stress. Our engines manipulate gravity itself. Theirs burn chemicals like primitive rockets. Our weapons can slice through dimensions. Theirs fire simple projectiles. Several delegates nodded as they compared the technologies. The differences were obvious. Jiwoo's gaseous form swirled in agreement. Advisor Min-soo is right. These humans may have been impressive to primitive civilizations, but they're no match for modern galactic technology. Min-soo continued his presentation. I propose Operation Safeguard. We establish monitoring stations around human space, defensive positions that can observe their activities and contain them if necessary. For their own protection, of course, contain them, asked Kyung-ho. They came here peacefully. Why would we need to contain them? Because they're unknowns, Min-soo replied. We don't understand their capabilities or intentions. Until we do, it's safer for everyone if they remain in a controlled area where we can study them properly. The Carothian delegate, covered in his thick fur, growled his approval. The military advisor makes sense. Unknown species can be dangerous even if they seem friendly. Elder Taemin looked around the chamber. Are there any objections to Operation Safeguard? Kyung-ho raised his hand. I object. The ancient texts repeatedly warn that humans value freedom above everything else. Trying to cage them, even for their own good, could be seen as an act of war. Ancient texts, Min-soo said dismissively. Advisor Kyung-ho, you're letting mythology cloud your judgment. These are real beings with real limitations. Their ships are primitive, their weapons are outdated, and they're outnumbered by our combined fleets. The texts say, the texts are stories, Min-soo interrupted. Ideal in facts. Ships, weapons, energy signatures, shield strengths. The facts say these humans are not a threat to anyone except themselves. Other delegates murmured agreement. The logic seemed sound. Advanced technology always won against primitive technology. It was a basic rule of warfare. Elder Taemin called for a vote. All in favor of Operation Safeguard? Most hands went up. Only Kyung-ho and a few others voted against it. The motion passes. Advisor Min-soo, begin deploying your monitoring stations immediately. As the session ended, Kyung-ho gathered his materials sadly. He had tried to warn them, but they wouldn't listen. He hoped he was wrong about the humans' reaction to being caged. Dr. Young-hee, the galaxy's leading expert on alien biology, worked in her laboratory on Vorthak Prime. She had been given samples of human tissue and blood to analyze, obtained from medical scans during the first contact meetings. What she found amazed and worried her. The human cells showed extraordinary properties. They could repair damage at rates far beyond any known species. They could adapt to different atmospheric conditions quickly. Most surprising, they seemed to function normally in radiation levels that would kill most galactic species. Incredible, she whispered as she studied the cellular structure. Their DNA has built-in error correction that's more advanced than our best medical technology. She ran more tests, checking the human's resistance to temperature extremes, pressure changes, and toxic environments. Every test confirmed what the ancient texts had claimed. Humans could survive in conditions that would be fatal to almost any other species. Dr. Young-hee immediately wrote a report and sent it to the council. The humans weren't just primitive beings with big ships. They were biologically superior in ways that could make them extremely dangerous. Her report never reached the delegates. It was intercepted by Min-soo's staff and buried in classified files. The military advisor didn't want anything interfering with Operation Safeguard. Admiral So-young stood in the observation deck of the New Seoul, watching through the transparent aluminum. As galactic ships took positions around the human fleet, she could see at least 50 vessels with more arriving every hour. Admiral, Commander Hyun-woo said as he joined her, the alien ships have formed a complete perimeter around our fleet. They're calling it a protective monitoring system. So Young nodded grimly. And their weapons? All armed and ready. They're trying to be subtle about it, but our sensors are picking up charged weapon systems throughout their fleet. Human Ambassador Inho approached them, looking frustrated. Admiral, I've been trying to negotiate with their representatives. They insist this is for our own protection, while they learn about us. What did you tell them? So Young asked. I explained that humans don't like being caged, even in comfortable cages. Their military advisor, someone called Minsu, said we should be grateful for their protection. So Young's jaw tightened. She had dealt with this attitude before in humanity's expansion through space. Other species always thought they knew what was best for humans. Admiral, his aide Hyejin said as she approached with a data pad. We're receiving communications from the outer colonies. They're reporting galactic ships moving into position around human space. It's not just us. They're surrounding all of our territory. So Young studied the tactical display. The galactic forces were being systematic and thorough. They had planned this carefully. Commander Hyunwoo, she said quietly, send a coded message to all human commanders. Tell them to begin Protocol 7 preparations, but do not implement yet. We'll try diplomacy first. Admiral, Inho said nervously. What is Protocol 7? So Young looked at him with sad eyes. It's what humans do when someone tries to put us in cages, Ambassador. It's what we've always done when someone underestimates us. Back on Vorthak Prime, Technical Officer Wu Jin monitored communications between the human ships. Most of the messages were routine. Supply reports, position updates, crew rotations. But some were different. The coded transmissions used encryption he couldn't break, but he could analyze their patterns. What he found disturbed him. The humans were sending the same coded message to every ship in their fleet. Whatever it said, it was important enough to reach everyone, and the ships were responding by making subtle changes to their positions and energy outputs. Wu Jin reported this to his supervisor, who passed it up the chain of command. Eventually it reached Minsu. Probably just routine military communications, Minsu decided. Maybe they're planning some kind of ceremonial formation or preparing to surrender their weapons. Keep monitoring, but don't worry about it. But Wu Jin did worry. The energy changes in the human ships looked like weapons charging, but the signatures were strange. Not like any weapons system in the galactic database. On the human ship Indomitable Spirit, Captain Dong Hyun received his orders with a heavy heart. His ship was loaded with medical supplies for the outer colonies. Where a disease outbreak needed immediate attention, he sent a message to the Galactic Fleet Commander. Request passage for humanitarian mission to Kepler Colony. Medical emergency requires immediate supply delivery. Admiral Seok Jin, commanding the Galactic Blockade, reviewed the request. His orders were clear. No human ships leave the monitored area without full inspection and approval. Request denied, he transmitted back. Submit to full inspection procedures, then we will consider your request. Admiral, Captain Dong Hyun replied, people are dying. Every hour we delay costs lives. Then you should submit to inspection immediately, Seok Jin responded coldly. Captain Dong Hyun looked at his crew. They had joined the space service to help people, to explore new worlds, to make humanity's mark on the galaxy. Now they were being treated like criminals. Helm, he ordered. Plot a course for Kepler Colony. Direct route. Sir, his navigator replied. That takes us through the blockade. I know. Lieutenant Chanwoo, on Admiral Seok Jin's flagship, watched his sensors as the human ship began to move. Admiral, the human vessel is not heading for inspection. They're moving toward the blockade perimeter. Warning shots, Seok Jin ordered. Show them we're serious. The galactic ships fired energy beams that passed close to the human vessel. Bright displays meant to frighten rather than damage. But the weapons were more powerful than intended for warning shots. One beam clipped the human ship's medical bay, causing explosive decompression. Dr. Ari and her assistant Boram were killed instantly, along with several patients they were treating. The human ship stopped moving. Captain Dong Hyun's voice came over the communication system, cold and controlled. Admiral Seok Jin, you have killed healers who were trying to save lives. You have drawn first blood between our species. Consider this your only warning. Seok Jin laughed. Warning? You're surrounded by 50 of our most advanced warships. Captain Dayun stood on the bridge of the Vorthak defense ship Star's Edge, watching the main screen with growing amazement. 3 weeks had passed since the mysterious fleet had been detected on long-range sensors. Now they were here at the edge of Vorthok territory, and they were nothing like anyone had expected. The ships were huge, some of them longer than entire cities, but they were not beautiful like the elegant bio-grown vessels of the Zephyrians or crystal-perfect like the ships of the Crystalline Collective. These ships looked like they had been hammered together from metal plates and held together with determination. "Report," Da-Yun ordered her tactical officer. Wu Jin looked up from his instruments. The same technician who had first detected the fleet. "Captain, I count over 300 vessels in various sizes. The largest ones are approximately 15 kilometers long. Their hulls appear to be constructed from refined metals, primarily iron alloys with carbon reinforcement." "Iron?" Da-Yun asked in surprise. "Nobody builds ships from iron anymore. It's too heavy and weak." "Yes, Captain. But these ships seem to work fine despite that. They're maintaining perfect formation and responding to our sensor sweeps. They know we're here." Communications Officer Yunji turned from her station. "Captain, we're receiving a signal from the lead vessel. They're trying to communicate. Put it through," Da-Un commanded. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that made everyone on the bridge gasp. The being on the screen had 2 legs, 2 arms, 5 fingers on each hand, and a patch of dark fur only on its head. Its skin was a warm brown color, and its eyes were round with dark centers. It looked exactly like the creatures from the ancient stone tablets that Ambassador Kyung-ho had shown to the Council. The being spoke in broken galactic standard, its voice deep and strong. "Greetings. I am Commander Hyun-woo of the United Earth Defense Force. We come in peace, seeking contact with galactic civilization." Da-Yun found her voice after a moment of shock. "This is Captain Da-Un of the Vorthok Defense Fleet. You're human." Commander Hyun-woo smiled, showing white teeth. "Yes, we are human. We have traveled far to reach you. We hope for peaceful relations and trade between our peoples." Behind Commander Hyun-woo, Da-Un could see other humans moving around what appeared to be their ship's command center. They wore simple uniforms and moved with efficient purpose. Everything about their ship looked functional rather than beautiful. "Commander Hyun-woo," Da-Un said carefully, "your people are mentioned in ancient texts found throughout the galaxy. Many believed you were myths." The human commander's smile grew wider. "We get that a lot. Admiral So-young said we might. She's our fleet commander and knows more about galactic history than I do." "Admiral So-young?" Da-Yun asked. "Yes? She'd like to meet with your leaders if possible. We have much to discuss." Da-Un felt overwhelmed. First contact with a new species was always complex, but this was different. These weren't just any aliens. They were creatures from legend, myths that had been filed away and forgotten. "Commander, I will need to contact the Galactic Council." This is bigger than I can handle alone." "We understand," Commander Hyun-woo said. "We're patient people. We've been traveling for a long time to get here. A little more waiting won't hurt." The communication ended and Da-Yun's bridge fell into shocked silence. Finally, Wu Jin spoke up. "Captain, what do we do now?" "We contact the Council immediately," Da-Un replied. "And we hope they believe us." 2 hours later, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was in chaos. Every delegate was talking at once, and Elder Taemin was having trouble keeping order. Ambassador Kyung-ho sat in his chair, feeling vindicated, but also terrified. His research had been right. The humans were real, but now that they were here, what did it mean for the galaxy? "Order, order." Elder Taemin's crystal voice rang through the chamber. "Captain Da-Yun, please repeat your report for the record." Da-Yun's image appeared on the main hologram display. She looked tired and stressed. The fleet consists of over 300 vessels of unknown design. They claim to be the United Earth Defense Force, and their commander identifies his species as human. "Impossible," said Ji-woo, her gas forms swirling in agitation. "The humans are myths, stories, they can't be real." "I've seen them," Da-Won replied firmly. "I've spoken with their commander. They match the descriptions in the ancient texts exactly." Council Military Advisor Min-soo leaned forward. "Captain, what is your assessment of their military capabilities?" Da-Un paused before answering. "Their technology appears primitive by our standards. Metal hulls, chemical propulsion systems, basic fusion reactors. However, their ships are very large and there are many of them. I would not recommend engaging them without knowing more about their intentions." Min-soo waved dismissively. "Primitive technology means primitive capabilities. Even with numbers, they couldn't stand against our advanced weapons and shields." Advisor Minsu, Kyung-ho interrupted. The ancient texts describe humans as peaceful, but extremely dangerous when threatened. Perhaps we should approach this situation with caution. Ancient texts are stories, Ambassador, Minsu replied coldly. I deal in facts, and the facts are that we have a large fleet of primitive ships at our border. We need to determine if they're a threat and act accordingly. Elder Taemin spoke up. What do the humans want? Daeyun consulted her notes. They claim to be explorers and traders. They say they want peaceful relations with galactic civilization. Their commander mentioned that their Admiral So Young would like to meet with our leaders. Explorers, Jiwoo said with what sounded like a laugh. With a fleet of 300 warships? They call it the United Earth Defense Force, Daeun pointed out. Defense, not attack. Names can be deceiving, Minsu said. I recommend we bring our full fleet to the border and negotiate from a position of strength. These primitives need to understand that they're dealing with advanced civilizations. Several delegates nodded agreement, but Kyung-ho felt a chill of worry. The ancient texts had been very clear about one thing: humans did not respond well to threats. Perhaps, Kyung-ho suggested, we should try simple diplomacy first. Send a delegation to meet with their admiral, learn what they really want, and show weakness. Minsu shook his head. No, we show strength first, then negotiate. That's how you deal with unknowns. Elder Taemin considered both options. Very well. We will send a diplomatic mission, but backed by a significant military presence. Captain Daeun, you will remain in command of the first contact team. Advisor Minsu will coordinate our fleet movements. The session continued for several more hours, with delegates arguing about protocols and procedures. But through it all, Kyung-ho kept thinking about one phrase from the ancient texts. The Star Children are slow to anger, but terrible in their wrath. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship New Seoul, Admiral So Young studied the reports from her scout ships. The aliens seemed friendly but cautious, which was expected. What concerned her was the military buildup she was detecting throughout the local systems. Commander Hyunwoo, she said to her second-in-command, what's your assessment of the alien response? Commander Hyunwoo looked at the tactical displays. They're bringing in warships from at least 6 different systems. Whatever they're planning, they want to negotiate from a position of strength. Admiral So Young nodded sadly. This was always the hard part about first contact. Everyone wanted to show their strength first instead of their good intentions. Chief Science Officer Jae Sung, she called to another officer. Have you completed your analysis of their technology? Jae Sung looked up from his console. Yes, Admiral. Their ships are definitely more advanced than ours in most areas. Better engines, better weapons, better defenses. But they're built for different purposes than ours. Explain. Their ships are designed for precision and efficiency. Ours are designed for endurance and reliability. It's like comparing a racing car to a tank. Each has advantages depending on what you need to do. Admiral So Young considered this information carefully. The humans had come in peace, but they were prepared for war if necessary. It was the human way. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Send a message to the Galactic Council, she ordered. Tell them we're honored to meet with their representatives. And we hope for a long and peaceful friendship between our peoples. As the message was sent, So Young looked out at the stars and wondered if this first contact would go better than some of humanity's others had in the past. The galaxy was beautiful, full of different life and amazing civilizations. She hoped they could all be friends. But if not, humanity would do what humans always did: survive and protect their own. The stage was set for a meeting that would change both humanity and the galaxy forever. The Great Hall of Vorthak Prime buzzed with quiet conversation as delegates from across the galaxy took their seats. The monthly meeting of the Galactic Council was about to begin. Ambassador Kyung-ho of the Valerian Empire shuffled through his papers nervously. Today he would present something strange, something that might make the other delegates laugh at him. The chamber was huge, with walls that reached up to the stars themselves. Different species sat in their special chairs made for their unique bodies. Some breathed different air, some needed special lights, and some could not even be in the same room without protective suits, but they all came together to keep peace in the galaxy. Elder Taemin from the Crystalline Collective called the meeting to order. His crystal body caught the light and threw rainbows across the room as he spoke. Today we will hear from Ambassador Kyung-ho about his recent archaeological work in the Outer Rim territories. Kyung-ho stood up on his 6 legs and activated the hologram display. Ancient stone tablets appeared in the air above the delegates. The writing was old and hard to read, but Kyung-ho had spent months translating it. "Fellow delegates," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "These tablets were found on 17 different worlds in the Outer Rim. They all tell stories about the same thing, a species called humans. A few delegates made small sounds of interest, but most looked bored. Stories from dead civilizations were common. Every world had its myths and legends," Kyung-ho continued. "But these stories are different. They appear on worlds that never had contact with each other. Worlds separated by thousands of light years, yet they all describe the same creatures." The hologram changed to show drawings carved in stone. They showed beings that walked on 2 legs with 5 fingers on each hand, and strange patches of fur only on their heads. The drawings were crude but showed clear details. "According to these texts," Kyung-ho said, "humans could survive in places that would kill most life forms. They could handle radiation levels that would destroy our DNA. They could live in extreme heat and extreme cold. Some texts even say they could survive in the vacuum of space for short times." Jiwoo, the delegate from the Zephyrian Empire, made a sound like laughing air. Her gas-formed body swirled in her containment suit. "Ambassador Kyung-ho, with respect, this sounds like the fantasy stories our children tell each other. No species can survive in space without protection." Other delegates nodded in agreement. The idea seemed impossible. Kyung-ho felt his confidence falling, but pressed on. "There's more. The texts describe other abilities. They say humans could heal from terrible wounds in days instead of months. They could adapt to new environments faster than any known species. And they had something the texts call the fire of will, a drive to explore and never give up, even when facing certain death." Now more delegates were making dismissive sounds. The Korothian representative, a large creature covered in thick fur, shook his massive head. "These sound like the stories primitive peoples tell to explain things they don't understand. Perhaps these humans were just travelers from a more advanced species, and the primitive peoples made them into myths." Elder Taiman spoke up. "Ambassador Kyung-ho, while your research is interesting from a cultural perspective, I think we can safely file this under mythology. Every civilization creates heroes and monsters in their stories. These humans are probably just another example of that." Kyung-ho felt defeated. He had hoped the other delegates would be more interested. "But the consistency across so many worlds is easily explained," interrupted Jiwoo. "Trade routes and cultural exchange. Stories spread from world to world, changing slightly each time they're told. Eventually, you get similar myths on different planets." The other delegates murmured agreement. It made sense. It was logical. Much more logical than believing in a species that could do impossible things. Kyung-ho gathered his papers sadly. "Very well. I'll file the complete translations in the cultural archives for anyone who wants to study them further." "Thank you, Ambassador," said Elder Taiman kindly. "Your work preserving these ancient stories is important even if they are just myths. Now let's move on to the trade disputes in the Gamma sector." As the meeting continued with more practical matters, Kyung-ho sat down heavily in his chair. He looked at the stone tablet drawings one more time before turning off the hologram. The crude figures seemed to stare back at him with their strange round eyes. Outside the Great Hall, in the deep space monitoring station that orbited Vorthak Prime, Technical Officer Woo Jin stared at his screen with confusion. For the past 3 days, his long-range sensors had been picking up strange readings from the edge of the galaxy. The readings showed massive objects moving through hyperspace. They were too big to be asteroids and too organized to be natural phenomena, but they didn't match any known ship designs in the galactic database. Woo Jin had reported the readings to his supervisor, but with the council meeting today, everyone was too busy to pay attention to sensor ghosts from the Outer Rim. He was told to keep monitoring and report if anything definitive appeared. He adjusted his equipment and tried different scanning frequencies. The objects were definitely artificial. Their movement patterns were too precise to be anything else. They moved in formation like a fleet of ships. But whose ships? The energy signatures were also strange. Instead of the clean fusion signatures of galactic vessels or the organic energy patterns of bioships, these showed primitive chemical burns and what looked like controlled nuclear fusion. It was technology that the galaxy had abandoned thousands of years ago. Woo Jin made notes in his log. Day 3 of anomalous readings. Objects maintain formation and consistent hyperspace velocity. Energy signatures suggest primitive technology, possibly pre-galactic civilization. Recommend continued monitoring. He paused and looked at his screens again. The fleet, if that's what it was still far away. At their current speed, they wouldn't reach the outer colonies for several weeks. Plenty of time to figure out what they were. But something about the readings bothered him. He had studied sensor technology for years, and he had never seen anything quite like this. The objects were large. Some of them were bigger than the greatest ships in the galactic fleet. Yet their technology seemed so primitive. He decided to run one more deep scan before filing his report. The sensors reached out across space, searching for more details about the mysterious fleet. What came back made him sit up straight in his chair. The scans showed not dozens but hundreds of objects. They were all moving together in perfect formation, like they had been doing this for a long time, and they were heading directly toward galactic space. Wu Jin reached for his communication panel to call his supervisor, then stopped. He would be told the same thing. Keep monitoring and don't panic over sensor readings that probably meant nothing. But as he watched the steady approach of the unknown fleet, Wu Jin couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Something big. In the cultural archives below the council chamber, Ambassador Kyung-ho carefully filed his research on the human myths. As he placed the data crystal in its storage slot, he looked one more time at the translations he had worked so hard to complete. One phrase kept appearing in the texts from different worlds. When the Star Children return, the galaxy will know their strength. He had always assumed it was just poetic language. Now filing it away as mythology, he wondered if he had missed something important. Above him, unknown to everyone, the mysterious fleet continued its steady approach toward galactic space.